Michael, thanks for helping me with my project.
Oh, it's a pleasure anytime.
So, did you know that NASA, the U.S. space agency, is planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
Back to,
The moon.
I did not know that.
Do you know the last time we went to the moon? Like, do you think it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago?
Um, that's a really good question. I would imagine about 20 odd years ago.
Would you believe 1972?
1972.
Yes. That was the last time people walked on
That's
the moon.
nuts. That is nuts.
Uh, now,
I would have never thought.
that it was so long ago?
Yes, yes.
What do you think about space exploration? Is it a good use of resources, or is it a waste of money, or like what's your thoughts?
Yes, um, yes and no. On the one hand, space exploration is important because it gives us a better understanding. It could potentially give us a better understanding um, of of the planet around us. But I personally think that a lot of those resources should be put into um, exploring the depths of the ocean and 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 what what the ocean has to offer for us. And um, yeah,
That's a very good point. I mean, because like the ocean is more than half the Earth. I mean, you could literally turn a globe and all you see is the Pacific. Like you can't see any of the land. And we know so little about what's underneath there.
exactly. I mean, isn't it said that we know more about space than we do about our oceans?
Well,
And,
I don't know,
and
but our oceans are definitely a lot closer to explore, aren't they? I mean, you could literally get in a boat in one part of the world and just move it all around the oceans.
well, exactly. And you know what? I think maybe now with this pandemic that's going on at the moment, it might give us as a human race a fresh perspective on what is more important. And it'll be going back to the question about what I think about exploration. Um, I think yeah. I'm trying to think of trying to think of the words now. I think that maybe people in general will start rethinking where we need to go as a planet, um, and how we fit into the universe as a whole, if that makes sense.
Or even how we fit in with each other. I mean, I think one thing this pandemic tells you is healthcare
Yeah.
for healthcare for kind of uh, a livestock person in China affects health for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, is
Well, this is the thing. I mean, for the longest time we were so focused um, on trying to find excuse excuse the pun, but a planet B. Completely forgot about planet A.
Oh, exactly. Well, planet A, planet Earth, is the most awesome planet in the entire solar system. Like, there is nothing that is even close to it. Um, Even if you took like the worst place on Earth, I think it would be more of a garden spot than every other place in our solar system. Um, but some people are looking at space development as a way to protect Earth instead of doing manufacturing and mining here on Earth. Move that into space, like energy production and everything, to help to preserve the Earth. And I was wondering what you thought about that. If you found it's kind of unimaginable, but would you find that to be an inspiring vision?
Look, it makes sense, because the current when we look at renewable energy as it stands, um, as much as there's a positive side to it, it still has a negative effect on the environment. And when you say that when you put forward the question now about about, from what I understand, harvesting power from space, how would that be possible?
So you would have these huge arrays of solar panels. You would put them in orbit around Earth where they would always be in the sun, and then they would beam down the power using microwaves to the Earth. And ideally, you would manufacture these big panels using not resources on Earth, but maybe resources on the moon, where you can get them without hurting the Earth. And it may, once you build the infrastructure, actually might require less energy and be cheaper to do from the moon once you get set up with mining and manufacturing there. So that's one thought. You could even put these
That
big.
actually makes sense.
Yeah, you could also put these solar panels. There's a place between the Earth and the sun where you can put an object and it just stays balanced between the two gravitational pulls. But it also is kind of neat because that place is always directly between the sun and the Earth. So you could imagine kind of taking care of both the renewable energy thing and partially addressing like the global climate change by sort of building a huge structure there that shades the Earth just a little. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe. It's. I think we're quite capable of doing way more than we're currently doing. It's going to be it could be a fantastic future.
Yeah, no, you've set off a thought pattern in my head now. My head's racing at 1,000,000 miles a second over what you just said. I mean, on the one hand, putting something between the sun and the earth would be would possibly aid in the climate crisis, but then on the other hand, putting resources on the moon would be, I would imagine, easier to maintain.
Yep. But
and more sustainable in the moon.
You could take the things from the moon and put them between the Earth and the sun. They found water ice in the poles of the moon which can be used as rocket fuel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's, the Earth has what, a 26-degree tilt relative to the sun. So, like, the face that's facing the sun has like 6 months of, the pole that's facing the sun has like 6 months of daylight, and the pole that's facing away has 6 months of night. But the moon only has a 1 degree tilt with respect to the sun, and it has these deep craters, and it doesn't have an atmosphere. So in these deep craters, it's like very cold, and over billions of years of comets hitting the moon and wet asteroids hitting the moon, some water molecules have made it into these cold areas. And whenever they get in there, it's so cold they can't escape. It just they just freeze there, and there's like starts to be millions of tons, billions of tons of water ice apparently. And that's one of the reasons we want to go and explore, is to see if it's really there and if it's usable.
But you talk about that being used, the water ice being used as rocket fuel. But would that water ice also be able to be used as something like jet fuel?
Jet fuel. Well, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, the jet fuel is really long carbon chains. It's kerosene and highly refined. Um, I'm not exactly sure what jet fuel is made out of, but what are you thinking? So, if it was jet fuel, what would you do with it?
Do you mind just repeating that, please? Because there was just a bit of a connection problem there.
Oh, no worries. So I'm not sure there's material on the moon that could be used as jet fuel, but if there were, how would you use that? Like, what, um, how would you use that, I guess? Like, are you thinking getting it back to Earth to use as jet fuel?
Well, you see, the thing is, though, is that when we look at if we look at big oil in comparison to big renewable energy, I think it'll be years before we fully go into renewable energy. Maybe this pandemic, on a positive note, will make people rethink the environment in which we live in, and how that big oil uh, and how I'm trying to think of the words now. Yeah, how people can people rethink the environment that they live in. But my point on that there was because was to see how so I'm thinking in a different language. Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's a very good question that you've asked me there. Um, because basically because jets and planes use up pump out so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And my question to that there would be, because it's ice, because it's water ice, instead of oil, instead of crude oil, if that or refined oil, would that water ice not be um, have a better impact on the environment?
Well, I think maybe a question that we might want to answer related to this, is it possible to have a hydrogen oxygen powered jet? You know, so you could take water, which is made of hydrogen oxygen, you could run an electric current through it, and the hydrogen and oxygen will pull apart into their separate components, and then you can take those and liquefy them and make them really condense, and then you can use that as rocket fuel. But the question is, could you use that also to kind of fly a plane around? Like, is there some way to kind of compress that? I mean, now you have me thinking. I'm wondering what we can do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Let's see. I have another question. So if let's say that going to space was as safe and affordable as flying, or as sailing, in your case, since you have been sailing across the Atlantic, um, would you have any interest in going to space?
Yes, I would.
And so,
Where,
oh, go ahead. Say again.
no, you were going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, how do you think going to space would compare to your experience on a boat? Because you've been sailing a lot for probably weeks and weeks at a time, kind of contained inside of a cabin and maybe an area that's about the same size as a spaceship. Well, how do you think those experiences compare?
Well, I can remember, I think we were sailing between Cape Town and Saint Helena Island in the South Atlantic. We were about 7 or 8 days off the shore, and we no longer with another 5 or so days to go. Um, and we're kind of off the African continental shelf. So the waves were the waves would roll for longer, and um, and in this particular instance, the sea was completely flat. It was about 11 o'clock at night and almost pitch dark. You know, all that was the only light there was were the stars shining on the water beside us, and we felt like we were sailing through space.
Wow, it was like smooth and dark and
So I don't think it would be um, yes, not another soul in sight besides our family, and dead quiet.
that sounds amazing. I'm hoping, a year from now, we could actually sell that boat you were talking about, having to move.
Do you mind just repeating that question again, please?
Oh, I hope to get some experience sailing sometime. And you were mentioning having to move your family's boat at some point, I think next summer. I was saying I hope that actually works out for us.
Yes, yes, most definitely, most definitely. We'll go and sail up the Grenadines.
Sounds awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.
Okay.